Welcome to Compassionate Cultures, the podcast. You're about to go on a journey of empathy, understanding, and transformation. Get ready to dive into the heart of humanity's most pressing questions with me, Rebbecca Hemmings, the CEO of Strawberry Words Training Consultancy, and guests. It's time to turn up the volume on kindness and to amplify the voices of minorities that often go unheard. This podcast asks questions like, how can we create workplaces where ethnic minorities thrive without the chains of career stagnation? What if universities were safe havens for all, free from the storm of microaggressions? And how can we bridge the gaps between cultures that have been divided by the walls of bias and ignorance? This is not just a podcast. This is a revolution of empathy. Welcome to Compassionate Cultures, the podcast. Get ready to explore, learn, and change the world one compassionate conversation at a time. Hey, welcome back to Compassionate Cultures, the podcast. And today I'm talking to you all about all things cultural competence. So on the last episode, we spoke about cultural humility, which really is what it says on the tin. I won't go into all of that today. I'm talking about cultural competence because that's well, a lot of people you may be familiar with the term, but not really familiar with the concept. That's what this episode is about. And I'm going to try and keep it brief and succinct and as clear as possible. All right, so we're going to get straight into it. So cultural competence refers to the ability of individuals and organizations to interact effectively with people from diverse cultural backgrounds. Again, it's one of those things that says what it is on the tin. It's about understanding different cultures, understanding your own culture also, understanding what culture is. Actually, let's go back. What is culture? Culture, in very simple terms, is defined as the way we do things around here. Okay, so it's the way you cook your food. It's the stories that have been passed down from generations. It's the clothing you wear. It's the identity to the flag that you have. It's your relationship and your values and beliefs around money, for instance. So it's how people from your particular background do things around here, okay? So I'm from a Jamaican background, and things that all define my culture is that we're very passionate people, we really speak from the hearts, okay? That can be misconstrued sometimes, but it's definitely, there's a passion there. We love, there are stereotypical aspects that people might assign to Jamaican culture, such as, we eat rice and peas and chicken. A lot of people do. I eat rice and peas. I don't eat chicken. I don't eat meat. But, there are certain things. And that's the thing. And that's why cultural humility is important. Because cultural humility, which is different to cultural competence, says that actually you're ignoring the differences and the uniqueness, the differences within cultures and the uniqueness of individuals. But again, we're not going there today. Today, we're focusing completely on cultural competence. So basically, it's saying that you've got enough information about a different culture to be able to interact. But in order for you to have information about a different culture, you also have to be familiar with your own. And, experience tells me that some groups of people are more confident explaining their cultures than others. Okay, so really what you want to do is to think about, what is it that defines my culture? What are the typical foods? Let's go with food. The typical foods I was brought up eating. What are the particular beliefs around the way you bring up your children, for instance? Children, and the rules by which children are brought up often give good clues as to what your culture is. Religion also is a huge part of culture, okay? So ask yourself questions around what were the particular rules in the way that I was brought up and told about the world, okay? What are my beliefs in general in life? And how do they compare with others, okay? Because particularly when you're from a dominant culture, sometimes you may not be able to box that off and completely understand what your culture looks like, but you do have a culture. We all have cultures, okay? So what are some of the key components of cultural competence? Well, it's very important that you have, as I said, an awareness of your own culture, your own cultural frame of reference, you know, and your own worldview and your biases, because again, we do have biases. If we've been told that, let's say for instance, I'll give you an example. I've probably given this example before, but let's say that growing up, I was taught that, you know, if people don't wash their chickens, you know, your chicken when when you're cooking your chicken, then they're nasty. That's what will be said. They're nasty, they're unhygienic. Yeah, that's a bias, right? Okay, so there's a lot of these things that might be said around the kitchen table, not necessarily out in public, but that have been said. Now I know as an adult now that actually it's quite dangerous to wash your chicken because you could be spreading salmonella all over the place, but that's just something I was brought up hearing. So what are some of the biases? And I'll say it again, I'll say it as many times as needs to be said. What are some of the biases that you've been brought up hearing within your culture? Maybe about a particular group of people or a particular practice, okay? That will give you some idea as to what your culture is. Okay, another component is knowledge. Again, just understanding more about other people's cultures. So I met somebody recently in a training session who said to me that she came from a part of the world where it was very monocultural, lots of white people. Let's be plain, right? And she goes, so when she moved to a very multicultural area, there were lots of things she didn't understand. So for instance, one night, there were lots of fireworks going off, and you know, she said she couldn't understand why all these fireworks were going off, and it wasn't Guy Fawkes night. So she looked it up and she found out it was Diwali. And so, you know, part of cultural competence is just gaining that knowledge about other cultures. You know, if some people aren't looking you directly in the eye, that could be because that's quite rude in that culture. For instance, if men aren't shaking women's hands, again, that might just be the cultural norm that we don't do that as a sign of respect, for instance. I know you're really enjoying the episode, but I want to quickly tell you about our DEI document review service. This is where we will analyze up to 7 documents of up to 10,000 words within a day, based on your organization. So that could be your EDI policy, it could be your website, it could be some of your comms, it could be job descriptions and so on. We will check for inclusivity, okay? Is it reaching a wide range of people? Are there terms that are non-inclusive? Is it up to date with its language? Are there any gaps for litigation? Is your organization at risk? We'll do all of that for your organization in a day. Write a report, do a SWOT analysis, and we'll make recommendations. The cost of this is £450 plus VAT currently. So if you want to know more, visit our website at strawberrywords.co.uk. Now back to the episode. Okay. Then there's the skills. That's developing communication and interaction skills to engage with people from diverse cultures. And I've just given you a few examples. It's also a key component is having the right attitude to different cultures. It's valuing diversity, valuing the richness of diversity. Like I went out to what was it called? The B-Side Hip Hop Festival in Birmingham a few weekends ago. And it was amazing because you had all these wonderful, different, rich cultures sharing their different dance styles. And I just thought, how lucky am I to be in a city where we have access to this? You know, a lot of people pay a lot of money to go and see what I saw, but we have that rich diversity, you know. So it's having the right attitude to diversity, valuing that, and actively seeking to understand and respect cultural differences. And it goes back to looking at your biases, because often what we can say is, well, we do things this way, and therefore when they do things that way, that's wrong, or we're so much better than they are. No, everyone just does things differently, okay? And then there's policy and practices, implementing within organizations inclusive policies and practices that support cultural diversity and equity. Okay, so why is cultural competency important? Again, I think for me who does this work, it seems obvious, but you may not know. So I'm going to say, right, well, firstly, it enhances communication, because if you know quite a bit about different cultures, you can easily communicate with people of different cultures. Again, I've been around people who aren't used to being around lots of diverse groups and can be quite reserved, or can be quite emboldened and feel as though, well, actually, well, this is my opinion. What I get is sometimes the impression that people feel as though, well, my culture is so superior that I'm just going to, just make conversation, but then they're microaggression all over the place. Yeah. So really understanding how important cultural competence is to enabling effective communication is key. All right, within an organization, again, because of that enhanced communication, it helps to improve teamwork. You can get along with many more people, and you can gain leverage from that, gain different ideas, different perspectives. Again, that just having that rich plethora of people from different cultures around the table is so incredibly powerful, useful, and can be very profitable. All right, so it can increase employee engagement and retention, because if you feel valued for who you are, if you feel as though, yeah, I'm recognized, I'm able to go and pray on a Friday, or I'm able to take this particular cultural holiday off, or even, Black History Month is celebrated, and it's much more than these things, but these little things matter. If I'm recognized, then I might feel like, wow, I can show up as my true authentic self. I like it here. I'm going to stay. Yeah. It can also, of course, lead to better customer relationships. I'm going to list these off now because time's going on. Compliance and risk management. Okay, so many regions have legal requirements related to diversity and inclusion. Okay, so cultural competence helps organizations to comply with those regulations. Okay, so how do you develop cultural competence? Well, research shows, in terms of bias and unconscious biases, research shows that the best way to undo your biases and also enhance your cultural competence is to be around people of different cultural backgrounds. Okay, but it has to be genuine. You can't be around people because, oh, I want to get to know you Indian people better, for instance. Like, that's just not how it works. All right, it's got to be a genuine desire to do that. Okay, but yeah, you can attend a training session. Of course, that's what we do. If you want some training, if your organization needs training around cultural competence, cultural awareness, cultural humility, anti-racism, microaggressions, unconscious bias, I could go on. That's what we at Strawberry Words do. Get in touch, www.strawberrywords.co.uk. Policy review and implementation. Review your policies to make sure that it's reflective of different cultural backgrounds, having diverse hiring practices, and encouraging open dialogue, creating those safe spaces for employees to discuss cultural differences, any issues that might arise, any ideas for changing how things work, and so on. So that's it. That is cultural competency in a nutshell. I hope you found this useful. If you have, please provide a comment. Why not? Like it. Certainly, please subscribe. And thank you. And I will see you next time. Bye.